Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Growing Up with Godzilla. My name is Donny Winter, and this is my show where I have conversations with Godzilla fans about how they've grown with the character and franchise over time. We are right smack in the middle of season 4, and I've just been having such a fun time this season with the great conversations I've been having. I've had many familiar faces returning, and I've had some new faces returning, or, well, not returning, making their first appearance. And this person is relatively new in my life. Granted, I feel like I've known them for forever. Like, like those friendships you kind of start building where, like, you are just kindred spirits, right? And I'm really excited for you all to get to know this person better. And I am excited as well for that same purpose. So I am excited to have on the wonderful host of It Came From a Monster Movie podcast and the author of Apex, a giant monster series, the ever so wonderful Henry Winston. How are you?
Hi, I always get so every time I guest, I always get the instinct to go like "hello and welcome" like I do on my show, and then I'm like, I'm not on my show. Just say hello. Just
If
say
I mean, but if
hi.
you did that though, I'd be fine. I would be living.
And you know what was funny when you were talking? I was like, I was thinking, how long have I known of Donnie? And I realized, like, I had heard rumor a few years ago about Growing Up with Godzilla, but like it didn't really click. But I actually realized first time I really learned about you was through the 70th anniversary comic, and I
You
actually
had that handy and ready to go.
I brought it with me to England. I got this from Jeff Zorno. I even have it signed from Jeff. So next time I see you, I got to sign it. But yeah, this is actually how I first learned of your existence proper. You became real after reading this.
Oh,
So no longer a myth and legend that was whispered
oh,
in my
oh.
my hermitage of the Godzilla community after the end of the original run of the show.
No, I mean, it's been so fun getting to know you these past few months because I feel like we really connect on so many different wavelengths, both by being, fans of the material, but also like, like being in the multiple communities that we're in. I feel like we just
Mm-hmm.
share like a lot of perspectives on things. So I'm really excited to just delve into your history as a Godzilla fan.
It's a
And
fun one, I've been told.
yeah, I know it's going to be great. I know it's going to be great. Well, the first question, as always, would be, how were you first introduced to Godzilla all the way from the beginning?
So I tell this story whenever I can, to be completely honest. Earlier this month, on It Came From a Monster Movie, Lily, my co-host Ben, and I did an episode called "The Monsters We Made Us" for our August broadcast episode, and we talked about the history of, like, we kind of did a little bit of what this show does, which is this question, which is like, how and why did we three individuals become monster movie fans? Like, how did we get into the creature feature? And like we talked about the DNA of Jurassic Park and Lost World Jurassic Park, and Godzilla 98 being a really important thing because we were, children of the 90s, so on and so forth. But my origin with Godzilla is a two-parter. The first time I
Hmm.
saw Godzilla was actually, well, I didn't learn about Godzilla first. The monster I learned about first was King Ghidorah, because I had a friend when I was born in Texas, and when I was there till Texas till I was 7, but we left Texas because I am very autistic, and I was nonverbal till I was 5, and the Texas education system in the 90s was not really great, and I would have been like hunted for sports. So we moved to South Carolina of all places because they had a school there for learning disabilities and people like myself to learn. Like, it's why I can talk to you now so eloquently, is I went through
Hmm.
a lot of therapy and schooling. But my I had a friend in Texas, and he had a Treadmasters King Ghidorah figure, and I was like, "What is this? A dragon with 3 heads?" Like, this was a mind blowing concept. And
Hmm.
then a month later, my neighbor who lived next door to us, because we lived like on like a farm, and we had a neighbor next door, and she got me a like 12-inch Treadmasters Godzilla toy. And this was like, because like I knew my dinosaurs pretty well, but Godzilla was like, like I didn't realize this was Godzilla. I knew like it said Godzilla, and that's how I learned it. But it was this figure was like mythical, like the plates, the head, and it came with a little comic. And wouldn't you know it, King
Mm.
Ghidorah was in it. So that's when I realized that it was all connected. And I like worshipped this toy. My mom eventually had to get rid of it because I was so hyper fixated on it. Like she would hide it from me, and then I would find it, hide it, and like pray to the damn thing. Like she was like, I've never seen you that obsessed about anything. And then shortly after that, and that like that figure obviously got lost in the move because it was unhealthy for me at the time. But we moved to South Carolina, and it was Friday night, and I was 7 years old. And it was the first time my parents allowed me to pick my own movie from Blockbuster. So I
Oh.
went to the sci-fi section because that's where all the dinosaur movies were. And I will never forget it. In Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, near where I lived, there was a whole section of the Blockbusters for Japanese giant monster movies. There was Gamera movies, there was Godzilla films. It was like all of them. Whatever was available in the late 90s on VHS, they were there. And I saw one that said Godzilla 1985. And I was like, there he is. That's the guy. So I rented that, and my parents let me rent it, but they were really nervous because, like, even though I had grown up on Jurassic Park,
Mhm.
and like later down the line, people are like, Jurassic Park's like quite a violent movie. I'm like, I just like dinosaurs, man. Like, kumbaya, circle of life. But like, Godzilla technically was the first like monster movie that I had ever seen that wasn't like a dinosaur related media. And my parents were a little nervous because they're like, this is technically like Henry's first, like, could be possible Henry's first horror film. And I watched it. I went into my room and I watched it. And I remember the VHS came with the Godzilla versus Bambi short film that
Oh,
played
yeah.
before it. So, like, that was an introduction as well. So it was just this whole thing. And then the movie was done. And my parents said they were in bed. And all of a sudden, I came into the room crying, like in hysterics, absolute meltdown. I was freaking out. And they're like, oh God, it scared him. Oh, it scared him. Because, oh no, and it's the 90s, so the they pronoun wasn't really around quite yet for me. But it took them 45 minutes for them to get me to talk because I was just
Mhm.
in tears and everything. And my mom goes, Henry, what happened? And I just was sobbing, and I was just like, he didn't have to die. And my dad
Oh.
looked at my mom and was like, is this because of Godzilla dying in the movie? And my mom was like, what? And I was like crying even more because I was like, Godzilla didn't have to die. He did nothing wrong. He was just really big.
Mhm.
And I'm getting emotional now because, like, just to jump ahead, because I know one of your questions is like, what draws you to the character and all that jazz. And it's because even as a young age, I connected with Godzilla because, like, I am autistic. I have dyslexia. I was very tall for my age. I At the time I mimicked dinosaurs and animals more than I interacted with people. Like I had a lot of really strong, hard social skills,
Mhm.
and I connected with Godzilla because like I felt very much like a giant monster. Where it was like Godzilla in 1985 does nothing. Like Godzilla in 1985 attacks the city, but it's not like attacking. It's just wandering around and
Yeah.
causing destruction and
Surviving. Yeah.
surviving. And that's, even at a young age, if I couldn't verbalize it, I connected with that concept. And so I always started to connect with monsters. And that is more or less my origin into the giant monster genre specifically, is because from the get-go, I don't really cry at movies. It's hard for me to cry in certain films, but the fact that that was the first time my parents saw me not just cry in a film but cry because of emotional distress is one of the reasons why, like, Godzilla is so integrated into my DNA as like who and what I am, because
Mm.
like I cried in Godzilla 1985 because I couldn't believe Godzilla died. And wouldn't you know my sheer and utter upsetness when I found out in Godzilla versus Biollante what happens next. I was very upset.
You
Very
were
upset.
put through that emotional mayhem
Turmoil. And oh,
just to
he was
just for
fine.
Godzilla to come back.
Just for Godzilla. I hadn't learned my favorite bingo card of Godzilla will return one day, which is my favorite Godzilla trope. I love the Godzilla will return one day trope. It's I get such goosebumps about it. So but yeah, that would probably be the best way to explain the origin to the giant monster
Oh,
genre.
that's, I mean, I think that's I mean, one, thank you for being vulnerable, but also like I think that's a very important history that I think many Godzilla fans may connect with, but it's not often articulated or explained or like given representation to. So I think that's important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like realizing that like especially those in neurodiverse communities like really may resonate with Godzilla in ways that those of us who are not in, may not completely fathom or realize. So and especially like you were describing like at that age, like after you had gone through all of that education and that therapy and work to get to where you were at that point in time, like being able to express that probably was like I don't want to say like something like new to you, but it probably was something like very
Well,
jarring to
it
experience.
was very jarring to experience. It's really funny. A mutual friend of ours, Lily, aka Trash Bug, has come up with a term because Lily knows my origins pretty well, and Lily is starting to use a term to explain that era, which is called elephant school, which is really funny because so as a kid, like I said earlier, I connected with dinosaurs and animals more. So and I was nonverbal until my first word was at 5, and I wasn't really speaking sentences till I was 6 or 7.
Hmm.
And before that, my parents, because at the time, like my dad was really successful in his business and my mom had like a bit of time as well. So they took me to the Houston Zoo, and you know those like school classes, like those like zoo school classes.
Hmm.
So they just rented one out for me, and I was like one-on-one trained by the zookeeper at the Houston Zoo, like the elephant
Hmm.
zookeeper, because that's the animal that I identified with. So I think that also ties into why I connected with Godzilla so much, is because like I in my development, I always connected with the bigger animals, the larger animals, the more stoic creatures, dinosaurs and elephants. So like the idea that Godzilla was the biggest of them all uh, really goes into, I think, that training, because like eventually Godzilla would inspire like my concepts of neutrality and just realizing that like good and evil is not as black and white as you think. There's
Hmm.
cause to effect, scientific hubris, a bunch of beliefs that I like really attune myself to. So it's
I
an
see. I
interesting
love
bit of
those
representation.
parallels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like an interesting bit of representation that I think is just super underdiscussed. So, like, I mean, I think it's important to carve out space, for that. So, thank you for sharing that for
No
sure.
worries, happy to do it.
Yeah. Okay. So this was the single digit years as a Godzilla fan. So, like, as you
Mm-hmm.
branched into the teenage years, like, how did it shift or evolve?
So it's funny because you brought it up before the show that we were going into this, and I was like, man, I'm just gonna probably wing it. And I realized, much to my delight, so one of the things we talked about in the broadcast episode for August was the importance of Godzilla 98. I loved Godzilla 98. I still do love Godzilla 98. I love to remind people that in the original run of the show, Godzilla 98, by literally a point 0.5 decimal point, is a more accessible Godzilla movie for new people unfamiliar to the genre than Shin Godzilla, which I think is phenomenal. But
Mm-hmm.
the thing is, Godzilla the series, the sequel to it, was like
Oh,
my favorite thing in the world. It was my Saturday morning cartoon. It was a whole inspiration, and I loved that. And Destroy All Monsters became this like love of the idea of like bigger worlds. The idea that like one, there's a monster of the week, but like that there are more moving parts in the narrative than just like one monster attacking the city, that there are multiple monsters all over the world, different places, different behaviors, different attitudes. And I loved that.
Mm-hmm.
And then flash forward into about middle school, early high school, I started doing a thing which was inspired, and this was still in the days where I thought GMK was a really good Godzilla movie, and that's a whole ramble from a past life of mine. Uh, but this is when I still thought GMK was a good Godzilla movie, and one of the things I loved about GMK was the idea that the monsters were born from the soul. And so I started writing fan fiction, as
Uh,
you do, which was the idea that me and my friends at the time were all on a cruise ship, and the cruise ship sank and we all died horrible deaths, but our souls went around the world and were infused into different classic Toho monsters that were like slumbering in hibernation. Like I was Godzilla, like I the you know a buddy of mine was Rodan, another person was Gigan, another person was Monster X. We had King Ghidorah. Like the it was very. I look back on it now, like the at the time the girl that I had a crush on, she was King Ghidorah. So I realized like that was the thing, but it was like supposed to represent this like love triangle that I had between her and then my friend who was Monster X. So there was,
mm-hmm.
and I look at it now being like, isn't it funny that because like they ended up dating, but like Monster X and King Ghidorah are much more akin than Godzilla. So it always kind of showed me that I had like no matter what, I was always going to be a little different from the rest of the
Mm-hmm.
organized stuff. And then over time, I just was like doing this thing where I was just pretty much like drag and drop people I knew into different monsters. Like I made one guy Kamanga and all that jazz. And I'll never forget the epiphany. It was about the time I was working on a fantasy series called at the time it was called Bro Wars, but now it's called the Brocon Chronicles, and I really want to get back into it because it's a fantasy series that's very near and dear to me, and it's a way that I've expressed my love for my two brothers and my older half sister. And when I was writing that, I learned about copyright.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that fan fiction is fine, but copyright is copyright. Because like I used to say, like it was pretty much like the idea that imagination was real and all that. Just this is very long winded, but we will get back. This is important to get to the
Mm-hmm.
Apex thing, which was originally Titan Wars. I was at the beach with my group of friends, and we were roughhousing in the beach in the water and stuff, and having a great time. And I went, why don't I make my own monsters? Like why am I using Godzilla monsters and stuff when I could just make my own? So I began what was originally called Titan Wars, which became my high school senior thesis. It then evolved after college into a series called Titan. And then after Godzilla King of the Monsters and the overuses of the word Titan in modern media, I
Mm-hmm.
developed a word called an apex organism, aka which are what we call the giant monsters in my original series called Apex: A Giant Monster Story. And one of the things that I always tell people is Apex is this really integrated deep lore science fiction series about all these monsters from different walks of all around the world, different mutations, different natural organisms, a whole hidden history of scientific nonsense. But it's really a fantasized biography of my life. All the monsters and their interactions and the story arcs and stuff are actually based off like things that have actually happened to me. It was how I started translating because I started working on in high school because I was turning everybody I knew into monsters. It's how I learned to navigate social situations. And it helped me have like a better understanding of internal interspecies conflict, aka,
Mm-hmm.
which is where I started being like, okay, I've made these two monsters. Right now they're fighting. Why are they fighting? Oh, it's territory or resources, and that's kind of how I start translating other people's experiences. And like
Mm-hmm.
in high school, people loved finding out that I made them into monsters. People had different like it helped me build the world a little bit better. And like my dream is to get Apex to a point where like there are figures and people can like buy those figures and literally go like that's inspired by me. Like which is something that I really want to give back to all the people that I know. But like it's a really like the last time I did a count of the amount of monsters that I had in Apex, we were over 100 different giant monsters and stuff. And like these monsters die, but their deaths symbolize when people like leave my life and like I don't know them anymore. So like, you know, they have to leave or they go back into hibernation. It's just this whole big grand story that are all these monsters living their lives, and I use like high school drama to bring them to life. And then as I've grown older and writing the current Apex, I've been using it as, it's a very queer story because I've been using it as my foil of explaining my journey with my agenderedness and exploring my trans space. Because like,
Mhm.
you know, not a lot of people realize that like non-binary and agender does go under the trans umbrella. And
Yeah.
like, you know, even for me, I've recently learned this, and I'm trying to navigate and understand that space and just, you know, understand my queer identity better, and I'm doing it through this giant monster series.
Wow. I mean, as someone who used to write Godzilla fan fiction in high school and put my friends in the stories, except in my stories, we weren't monsters. We were like people with psychic power, like Mickey
Mm-hmm.
Sagoose's best friends. We were like,
Right.
it was like a dollar discount X-Men when you think about it. But like I realized that I used those characters to kind of like self-actualize and like self-accept and like develop a similar understanding to like those interpersonal relationships. I don't think I've ever had anyone describe it as closely as how I've envisioned it in my mind as well with my own
Mm-hmm.
fan fiction experience. So I'm like really nerding out right now because it's making me feel seen in a way that I feel like I've not been seen in a long time.
Well, you know, it's always funny because when people ask me when like where do my ideas come from, because like that's how Apex was born, but like it came from a monster movie, especially now with it came from monster movie Rebirth. People are like, oh, how did you come up with the idea of the movie? And like, you know, as you know, ICFAM is a very lengthy recording process, and people are like, why is it such a lengthy recording process? And like, because it's how I made friends growing up in uni.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I went to university, I didn't like, I didn't have social skills. I didn't even realize I was autistic yet. My parents just said I had to work extra hard, and I had like, I was in special ed classes, but they were homework help classes and all this stuff. So I
Mm-hmm.
just didn't really know how to like make friends without people saying like, "Oh, nice dinosaur shirt," and I would literally like put the cuffs on them and be like, "I'm your friend now. Like you've recognized that I like dinosaurs." And something I used to do in university was we had a common area, and I love watching movies, but sometimes I like to showcase films. I like to like put a movie on and have people around and enjoy the laugh. I like to have the MSK3 experience. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I like a little talking in my movie. I like a little bit of like hijinks and all that jazz. And what I would do is if I wanted to watch a Godzilla movie, I would go to Publix because I went to school in Florida, and I would buy all this food and snacks and drinks and stuff, and I would lay it out in the common area, and people would like see the buffet, the one person buffet, and they're like, "Oh, do you want help with that?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, I like, feel free to have these snacks and stuff." And they're like, "Oh, this is great." And I'm like, "Hey, you don't mind if I put a movie on since like I'm technically feeding you all, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, no, put whatever you want on." And I'm like, "Great, we're watching Godzilla Final Wars." And they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Too late, you said yes." And then afterwards, I would talk to people like, "What did you think?" And they're like, "This was weird," or like, "This was fun," or "I didn't know Godzilla could do that." And when I came back
That's
from the
iconic.
Oh, well, and it was funny because when I came back from Korea and I wanted to make a podcast and was thinking about the format of the show, I pitched it to my sound engineer at the time, and he literally looked at me like, "Henry, isn't this what you just do on the regular? Except you want us to record it now?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to do the like, I have bought you a pizza and I have tricked you into watching a monster movie with me." And that's the origin of the It Came From a Monster Movie experience, and that's why it's been so nice bringing Rebirth back, because like we've been on the air. Rebirth is the sequel series. It's the more fine-tuned series than the original 5-year run, and I gotta admit, like I have been really enjoying exploring these movies again with Rebirth, and like in having more of a wide variety of people and stuff. Like I laugh at your 100th episode stream. I just was like, because like some people I knew, but then they're like Celeste, who I didn't know. I was like, getting them on the show, using them. Like everybody's G-Fest posts, I was like,
Oh,
that person's cool, that person's cool. Gonna message them, sliding to that DM.
well, and
It's
what
been
people
really.
don't realize is that's how we network with each other, technically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're like, "Oh, who appeared over there?
Yeah.
Okay, like, maybe you
You
might be
look like you
interested
might
in
have strong
seeing."
opinions about a Godzilla movie. That would be
No,
fun to record.
I will, and I'm kind of obsessed with the lore behind, um, the ICFAM podcast because, like, the what you were describing about buying all that food for everybody, like, what you were doing is you were just kind of gathering like the raw authentic experience of watching a movie for the first time
Mhm.
unfiltered, right? And to me, like, while there is a critical lens to your podcast, like, it is allowing for that raw experience to be captured in some fashion, which I think is a rarity. Like, you don't really see that often in a podcast. So I know I am at some point. I know I will probably be on the show, and I'm really
Oh yeah,
stoked about
it's a
that.
coming.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. So, but no, like, and here we are now. Our roads have crossed. We are having this wonderful conversation, and I'm like, I just looking at each other's histories. Like, I just find it so warming that we navigated all we navigated through to get to where we are now,
Hmm.
right? And I hope that like other fans realize that like the journey, like there are so many challenges along the journey, but like when you find the people that you feel like you belong with the most, like it's gonna feel really great when you finally get to that point.
The found family is a concept that we explored in our LGBTQ positive panel, Lily, Destiny, and I, for Kaiju Brooklyn. And over the years, I have really appreciated the found family concept of like misfit toys. Like, I really like the fact that I have cultivated that there are people in my life that I have cultivated to be like not just like friendly with, but like I feel like we use the word friend really easily these days. And
Mhm.
for me being autistic, I have to be careful with that word because if someone says friend, I'm going to assume that you have those priorities. And something that I
Right.
have reached recently is that like while I do have good friends and stuff, like boundaries are boundaries. And it's one of those things where it's like why I identify with giant monsters is because something that is known by most but might not be known here is while Godzilla is one of my favorite franchises, Godzilla is actually not my favorite giant monster. My favorite
Mhm.
giant monster is Gamera, especially, and
Mhm.
that was inspired by the Heisei era, and also Gamera versus Ziegler, which I will go on the record as one of the greatest movies ever made. But
Mhm.
Gamera is a good guy. Like, in especially in Gamera Rebirth and all that jazz, like Gamera is a good guy. But in doing good, Gamera is still destroying the city. And
Yes.
I feel like that's something a lot of people don't make that connection with is like you could be doing the right thing and all that jazz, but you could still be hurting people. And especially people that you're trying to protect or be close with. Because, like, at the end of the day, like, not to sound absolutely dreadful, but a monster is a monster. Like, even a good monster is still going to be a terrifying aspect. And
Mhm.
something that I'm currently experiencing in my journey right now is the fact that, um, I moved to England last year. I live in a very small village and I live in the most wonderful place in the whole wide world, but it is a bit isolated. And I have recognized that like while I'm trying to do good and trying to make my good positive connections, I am very much like Gamera, where like my goals are good, my beliefs are good. What I'm trying to do is help people and be there for people and all that jazz. But it's hard to do that from a distance. And at the end of the day, I'm still wrecking Tokyo for somebody, just
Mhm.
because I'm trying to be more present and
Mhm.
big things still smash small things. So, it's just a thing I think people like. I don't know if a lot of people have that connection with the giant monster thing or like think about that, but like even Ultraman has those episodes where like, dude, like yeah, you defeated the bad monster, but like you destroyed half the city in doing so. Like why? Like
Mhm.
if you're supposed to be the good guy, why are you still hurting people? in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Wow. I've never quite thought about it in that fashion. It's very, see, that's why we have these conversations, right? Because, like, I mean, I've always resonated with that, like, anomalous quality of the giant monsters, but, like, even, like, the benevolent one, like, even, I love Mothra, but even loving Mothra, like, Mothra's still a giant monster. She is still a destructive force
mhm.
in some regard, right? And I don't think I've ever created that parallel before, but I think that is an excellent, like, metaphorical representation of what it, like, the landscape of what it looks like to maintain friendships and relationships and to develop, develop those connections, right? Because sometimes, like, there are going to be moments where it feels treacherous or where it feels, you know, cataclysmic, right? But,
Mm.
like, amid all of that, like, once the dust settles, like, there is this point where we gather our pieces and, like, rebuild in some fashion, right? Um, no, that's, ooh, I'm getting goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps,
Have fun with
Henry.
that thought while you go like, oh man, how much of a giant monster am I? It's just one of
That'll be
those
that'll be
things.
the subtitle of the episode. How much of a giant monster am I?
It's better than the first time I guessed it on the show where it was Henry the host hates kaiju, and because I have a whole rant, I won't do it on this show. It'll be like a next time tune in or something like that.
The
Where
second round guests, I do have, like, those controversial kaiju questions, so I am
Yeah,
excited
because
to have
just
you on again.
spoilers. I absolutely cannot stand the word kaiju at all. I really can't.
It is
Uh,
very general when you
I
think
get
about it.
very, I get, you know, I think the bet if you ever want a preview of what that conversation is like. In the original run, Lily and I did a charity commentary track for Aliens, and in that episode, we talk about it. And I pretty much said, like, to prove my point, Aliens is my favorite kaiju film because it's a tokusatsu film through and through because it's guys in suits. A
Mhm.
Strange Beast is by like, it's definitely a kaiju film, but like, let's say if they were the size of a building, then it would be a daikaiju film because they're giant monsters. So
Mhm.
that's it, just a little sprinkle of a teaser of the rant and mayhem that I try to cause in this community sometimes,
I
where
love
I
it,
go like,
though.
Henry's not wrong, but at the same time, shut up.
It's the specificity. Like, the specificity is important, right? So, well, all right. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you the indulgent questions.
Mhm.
Okay. So, I I mean, we've talked about a variety of films up until this point, but I want to know which Godzilla films are your favorites at this point in your life and why. And I usually tell people to pick a top 3. I sometimes people will pick a safe top 3 and then pick their fun top 3 afterward. Whatever you would like to do.
Well, so when and I know I keep uh bringing her up, but like Lily and I have been like friends and creative partners for many many years. And when minus one came out, well, when minus one was coming out, we decided to what's the word? Watch all the Godzilla movies in chronological order,
Mhm.
which was super super fun. And something that we did was we recorded them all in Letterbox, and it was a great time. I have you had the pleasure of watching them all in chronological order?
Yes.
It's a
And I love
really
it.
fascinating experience.
Mhm.
And I found out through that experience, I have a top five. I'll do my top five because they're right here and we could go from there. I won't do my
Perfect.
top 10 because that will start sparking controversies. But my top five favorite Godzilla films are Godzilla minus one at number one. I think it's one of the most solid Godzilla films. Like I know it's is the newest one, but I think it hits the formula perfect. After
Yeah,
that, it
I'd
would
say
be
so.
Godzilla 1954. My third favorite Godzilla movie, my most watched Godzilla movie. Whenever I want to be like, we're gonna watch a Godzilla movie, because like if this is my like, if I'm sad we're watching this, if I'm happy we're watching this, if I'm angry we're watching this. Like if
Mm.
my friends are like, you can pick any movie you want, this is most likely the movie I'm gonna pick. Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 1974. It is
Oh,
my
my
all-time
first
favorite.
one.
Oh, it's great. It's my favorite one. I used to use it for my English classes I used to teach for middle schoolers. Like when they were like, when it's that classic TV day of like, no, we're just gonna watch a movie, guys. And this is one always hours of fun. Like that English dub is so solid. Like it's so cheesy, but it's so solid. I love. I just that is by far like minus one and Godzilla 54 are obviously like critically acclaimed favorite films. Da da da. Like they are solid good movies. But if you had to like tell me what's your favorite Godzilla movie, it's most likely going to be Godzilla 74. Just because I and the music is amazing. Like oh, what a
Oh,
soundtrack.
agreed.
After that, my fourth favorite Godzilla film is Godzilla the Planet Eater.
We let's manifest some love for the anime trilogy.
It really is great. People need to calm down. uh that like people need to calm down just a little bit about
I
the
agree.
animation.
I do wholeheartedly agree with you.
uh Void Ghidorah is probably one of my all-time favorite interpretations of the character. You know, I think Planet Eater addresses some really cool themes,
Hmm.
uh especially the ones that like kind of align with what I'm always talking about, which is like, yeah, the monsters appear because of scientific hubris. Like to advance, you create a larger shadow.
Hmm.
And I just think that's really
Yeah.
cool. Also, like, give me more monster cults. I love when we start worshiping these giant monsters because they're natural forces. There's no difference than worshiping a hurricane. And then
Yep.
number five would definitely be Godzilla versus Hedorah, which I call the Rocky Horror Picture Show of the Godzilla franchise.
That is that is amazing.
Because it
But
really
I see
is.
it. I
It
do
really,
see
it's
it.
got the vibe. It's a very Rocky Horror Picture Show kind of movie. And like what I love is I introduced that to a trans friend of mine, and they're like, Henry, this movie is amazing. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I will note, I realized I didn't bring this up. Even though those are all my top favorite those are my top favorite films, it's not my favorite piece of Godzilla media though.
Well, now you have my interest
Yeah, I
peaked.
know.
What is your favorite piece of Godzilla media?
Godzilla Singular Point.
Oh, which also underrated in my opinion.
Very underrated. I have been told again, mostly by Lily. So I apologize if I'm overdoing it with mentioning her.
No, we
But
love Lily here, so please
uh,
reference Lily.
Lily once defended me and was like, Henry is probably the only person that in the community who understands Singular Point at its finest level, because during the original run of the show, when Singular Point came out, we did community watches, and we're in the process of doing community watches again. Like we had K Day earlier this month in August. We're trying to do weekly community watches or every other week community watches of different movies, and just bringing that like ICFAM feel to our Discord server, which I really recommend people checking out the Discord server because I'm trying to cultivate a really positive monster community that's just more than monsters, but just as much about monsters as well.
Hmm.
And during the Singular Point watch parties, I would play the new episode, but because I knew people couldn't make it every week, I would set up a time. I would start the start time earlier and earlier because I would then put on the previous episodes. So every
Mm.
week, I'd watch episode one, and then the next week I'd watch episode one again, and then episode two, and then episode one, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 5. So I was just watching these episodes on loop over and over and over again, which is probably the best way to experience that story, since that story is all about how time works. And
Hmm.
the like literally at the end, I was like, oh my god, the Jet Jaguar twist makes so much sense. Like it's all been there. It's been literally scattered. And people are like, how did you know? And I'm like, because I have been watching these episodes on loop for about a month now. Um
No, I mean Singular Point. I think the criticism that the anime trilogy and Singular Point gets is like people just are uncomfortable with the level of experimentation that Toho has done with Godzilla.
mhm.
But I feel like Godzilla is at the point where to avoid stagnation, experimentation is crucial, right? Because it shows the health of the franchise. And like as a shameless like Star Trek fan and like Doctor Who fan, like when I watched
Mhm.
Singular Point, like I was like, I'm following, like, I'm following this, and two, this is something unique that I've never fathomed would be done with Godzilla.
Mhm.
So I was immediately like drawn into it, and I really loved it. Um, oh, you're making me want to rewatch it again.
It's also my like favorite interpretation of Godzilla as well. Godzilla Ultima and the whole franchise is like literally my favorite way Godzilla has been portrayed in media.
Hmm.
Just because you get to see the evolutions and the transformations, and I am a sucker because like I know, it's Godzilla Equalitus and Godzilla Terrastalis and Godzilla the other one, but I'm like, I love that it's Titanosaurus, Varan, and Gorosaurus that turned into Godzilla. Like absolutely, like because I'm a huge Titanosaurus fan. I'm a huge Varan fan, even though Varan's movie is very not good. Uh, and Gorosaurus, the Zilla aspect of the other form is phenomenal. But it's just like a real like I love it. It's one of my favorite interpretations of the character.
Uh, Again, I'm glad that we've talked about both that and the anime trilogy because again, they both deserve more love.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna break it down more and focus on like some characters and kaiju. So you already kind of talked about like some of the kaiju that you really enjoy, but I like feel free to share some more as well. Are there any particular kaiju, human or non-human characters that you're drawn to, and if so, what draws you to them?
In the Godzilla franchise, I think I know this might sound weird, but I think Nyctatopolis is one of my favorite Godzilla characters of all time.
It doesn't sound
Um,
weird at all.
it like just because I've always liked the scientist character. When I was writing Apex, like originally Rick Winston, who is the main character for Apex, was like a dude and da 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 da. But like eventually, I was like, I want to make Rick because like the thing is in Godzilla '98 and in this Godzilla animated series, Nick is always challenged by the military or other people like you're a science guy like da 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 like you're an expert in your field but we don't trust your judgment and I'm like that makes no sense to me. Like I know we're not like I know a lot of people have the stereotype of like don't trust the scientist, but like in a world of monsters maybe trust the scientist. So like even
Wise.
from just the idea, so I wanted to make a reason why, and then it was around the time I started to realize that I was agendered and I didn't really coerce with the gender idea. I started exploring my non-binary space, and I was like, well, I get a lot of like hate and distrust because I don't adhere to a male gender norm. Oh, that's what I'll do. I'll make Rick Winston a trans man. So
Mm,
there's that aspect of Nick, Mickey Sagusa, who's a phenomenal character. It's actually really weird because Mickey is a great character, but they never like it's never. We put a lot of stuff on the Mickey Sagusa character,
mhm,
which I think is funny and all that jazz. The main character in -1 was a really good character as well.
mm, mhm,
Just because, especially with how mental health is portrayed in that film, I think is really near and dear to me.
mm,
Like the thing is, like the human characters are great, but like the Godzilla human characters are usually ones that I don't really relate to because
mhm.
like I said, like I said at the top, I'm relating to the monsters, and like not to be like, no, I don't care about the human characters. No, you need those human characters. Minor One proves the fact you need those human characters.
For sure.
But like, you know, if I wasn't imprinting on my parents as a kid to do, and like it's funny because you do in that regards. You're like, oh, then you're always going to imprint on monsters. But you brought up Star Trek and Doctor Who, and I'm like, no, I love Star Trek. I love Doctor Who. Like,
Mhm,
I used to be really obnoxious and think I was a Time Lord and part lost regeneration of the Doctor. And
mhm.
in Star Trek, like I my goals and aspiration are to be Picard, even though I realize like, no, I think I'm more Q. I think I'm more of a Q person. But
It's funny, the older I get, the more I'm realizing I'm a Loaxana Troy. Mm.
that's how that kind
Ah!
of works. But
Anyway,
anyways, but
the non-Star Trek fans are gonna be like, "What are they
but
talking
like
about?"
that's the thing, and like it's funny because I'm thinking about like, oh, what's a human character I relate to, and then I'm like, oh, like in the tokusatsu giant monster genre, and I'm like, oh well, like, and I'm like, nope, that's an Ultraman. So I'm still relating to a non-human character
Mm-hmm.
as a thing, and that's just probably the spicy neurodivergence that makes it my DNA. Is that I just, and I want to stress this to the listeners again, like, human characters are important, and if you identify with some, great, that's what you got to do. Sadly, my brain is wired to like look at this monster, and as I said, I literally did a thing being like, yeah, even if you're a good friend, you could still mess up somebody's day doing the right thing. And I learned that from giant monsters, not through the human characters of this franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely one of those. That's probably the best way I'm going to explain that, answer that question.
Honestly, that was a very thoughtful and fascinating answer to the question. So, no, like, and I think that, I think again, like I think a lot of people like tend to divorce the idea of like like the giant monsters themselves being characters too, right? Because I feel like people just have like this association where they just focus on like human and non-human characters, but they don't even lump the giant monsters into the category of character. And I'm like, no, they are. Like, they have arcs, they develop, like in varying ways, and you know viewers can relate to them on some wavelengths and in a variety of different ways. So no, like, that's just really gotten me thinking a lot about like how people tend to partition,
If it
like.
makes you feel better, one of my favorite teaching moments was in my when I was with my middle schoolers. We were, it was the end of the school year, so I put on Godzilla versus Megalon, and we were watching that and having a blast. And one of my favorite students, who is a phenomenal writer, and I really hope they are still writing because like they wrote some really top notch stuff, leaned over to me during the Godzilla versus Megalon fight and was like, "Henry, teacher," and I was like, "What? They're not monsters." And I was like, "Oh, explain. They're characters." And I was like, "Yes, they are." And like, because they have personalities. Like, you're rooting for who you want to win because you identify with those characters. And it just made me all giggle because, like,
Mm,
um, yeah, I just a nerdy thing is I think one of the reasons why I'm able to also identify with monsters and view them as characters just as much as human characters and stuff is I'm a huge Digimon fan, like
mhm.
huge Digimon fan, especially because in recent years Digimon has gotten really queer positive, and I've been all for it. In fact, Digimon is how I learned about non-binary, because it's actually gender is
Fascinating.
actually talked about in one episode, because Digimon don't have gender. They
Mhm,
just, they'll adopt a gender, they'll adopt a pronoun that is all right, but like they don't necessarily have gender. And
mhm.
there's an episode in the first season called, I think it's called Out on the Town, and it is a story about two of the Digidestin in Tokyo, and they meet Pumpkinmon and Gatsumon, and it's these two henchmen for the bad guy, but they're just out having a good time. They're having like a really fun time. They're like, eating ice cream and like, wearing clothes and just really enjoying it. And like they even get challenged, like, shouldn't we be fighting you? Like, nah, we came to the human world because we just wanted to have a vacation from the digital world. Like, we're not. And like, for me, it was one of those things where I'm like, I didn't realize that monsters had a choice
Mm,
on
mhm.
like how monsters can have a choice of like, do I want to be a monster or do I just want to have a good time? And like, we're gonna choose to have a good time. And like that helped me like cement what Godzilla was already teaching me, is that like not everything is black and white as you think it is. And like, even if you call it a monster, there's a chance that like that monster, like, with Gamera's a good monster. You're still using the word monster, but also it's important to have good in front of that as well.
Yeah.
When I babysat, I had kids actually ask me to leave Gamera figures in their rooms when they slept because they knew if Gamera was around, then bad monsters couldn't attack.
Mm.
Like Gamera and
That's so
Mothra.
wholesome.
Yeah, like if Gamera and Mothra figures were in their rooms, they knew that if they had dreams about bad monsters, Gamera and Mothra would at least show up to stop that. Which I just thought
That
was really
is
sweet.
that is so wholesome to me. Well, I do. Okay, so this is a big question that I ask
Mm-hmm.
everyone, and I think we've touched on it in a variety of ways. But how has Godzilla shaped you into who you are today?
I think we've really hit this on the nail on the head, but I think just to like sum it up, Godzilla has taught me that sometimes in a story you're going to be the bad guy. Sometimes in a story you're going to be the good guy. Sometimes you're just a dude that shows up, walks around in someone's life and might accidentally knock over their like ruin their day or make their day. You don't know.
Mhm.
But you still got to do it. You know, you
Yeah.
still got to move forward. You got to still move forward in your story, and you might not be aware of how you're being told in that story, but you still got to do you still got to get up in the day. You still got to move forward. You still have to rise out of Tokyo Bay and see what happens. You could knock
Mhm.
over a building or you could save someone's life. You could, make someone question their humanity or make someone cement that their hatred of you. Like, you have no control of how people are going to look at you and stuff. And you just got to deal with it. And like with Godzilla and the giant monster genre as a whole, it just even Godzilla can make a friend.
Yeah.
Like maybe Godzilla's not the best friend you could have because of the way he treats some of his allies, or their allies. But like sometimes you're going to be alone, sometimes you're not going to be alone. It just depends on what the story predicts. So I think
Mm.
uh, people can listen to how this episode has gone to get more layered about that. But I think my knee jerk response would simply be like, Godzilla reminds you that you're in a story. Like life can be a story and you can tell your narrative for sure, but there will always be people who will think of you as monster. There'll always be people who think of you as a hero, and there will always be people who will be like, "Nah, that's happening in Japan and doesn't affect me whatsoever." So, it's just one of
Oh,
those things.
that was a fascinating answer and a great answer too, honestly. So, well, okay, if we were to venture into the realm of collecting, do you consider yourself a collector? How far does
I
your love of collecting go? What do you do?
I used to collect quite a bit. A lot of my money went to it. Much of thing. I do have my companion Shin, which is a really helpful buddy of
Oh,
mine. I love my little Shin companion.
so cute.
Um, like Kaiju Brooklyn, I was able to get some of my favorite figures. Like I got the Matcha Hedora, which is something that I've always wanted. Uh, I made a post of the day of the recording where it showed my like Haya Emerald Mothra, my Ultraman Taro, Godzilla -1. Like I collect a few monster arts, I collect a few Haya figures. I do a lot of toy photography in my spare time.
Mm,
And so like usually I make sure that I buy toys that I think will make like good figures for photography. But lately I think the thing I collect the most are like books and art books. Like one of my most prized collected Godzilla pieces of material is the paperback omnibus from back in the day of the
mm-hmm,
essential guide to Marvel's Godzilla comics run. Which
mm-hmm.
I know there's a recent hard copy, but like if you want to ask how loved it is, it's that loved. Um, it's that loved. But like you know, this is out of print. The IDW comics are really well done. I have uh, Shinji Nishikawa is my favorite Godzilla artist, concept artist. So I have a lot of his books because I think they're really important to understand how the characters have developed. I collected in the con days. I used to collect a lot of art pieces, but now that I've moved to England, like I live in a very small room, so I can only have so much. I mean, I think my proudest collection is just getting the 70-year history of Godzilla
Mm-hmm.
that was recently released. This book is phenomenal. It's all about the Japanese production of Godzilla, which I think is super fascinating. The
Mm-hmm.
one thing, and I showed it to someone in the village, and they're like, "Oh, the American films are not in here." And I'm like, "No, sadly, it's just the Japanese Godzilla. Like, I think it got snubbed." But then I realized how snubbed the American content is in this, because they have King Kong versus Godzilla in this book, as they would, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Oh, I can't wait to see the work." There are no pictures of King Kong in the chapter. Like there are pictures of the poster, which has King King on it. None of the production photos have, there are no images of King Kong in that. Like in all the other ones, there are images of the monsters and stuff, but there are no images of King Kong in the King Kong versus Godzilla thing. And I find that fascinating. I think that's super
That
passive
is
aggressive.
interesting.
Uh,
I do love pettiness. It's so entertaining to me.
I think it's very petty. I think Toho is a lot of things, and I think petty is one of them. Um, so
Oh my
uh,
goodness.
yeah, it's a whole time.
It is, but I love it. No, this has been, Henry, this has been such a wonderful conversation. And as I knew it would be,
Yeah,
I do have one final question for you, though.
go on then.
Do you have any advice for Godzilla fans who may be new to the franchise?
Listen to my show. Listen, listen to Came From a Monster Movie Rebirth every Friday. I mean, not there. I think in the programming for this year, so far there's one confirmed Godzilla film, but there are a few giant monster movies and stuff. I think with a Godzilla fan, like if you're new to the Godzilla franchise, I think the weirdest thing I would say is watch more than just Godzilla. Like what, like really explore the giant monster genre, because like the amount of Godzilla fans who haven't seen the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms low keys upsets me. The amount of Godzilla fans who have never watched the Gamera movie low keys upsets me. The
Mm,
amount of Godzilla fans who aren't Ultraman fans really blows my mind a little bit. Because like some people
hmm
are like, well, I don't like Ultraman. I'm like, then watch Mega Monster Battles, because that is only about the monsters.
Henry, there
Um,
are a ton of Godzilla fans who haven't watched the Mothra trilogy, and you know how I feel
yeah,
about that.
yeah.
Like, I'm
I mean,
like,
and also like, I don't know, read a book. You know, there's that. Like, if you want content, read Apex, the Giant Monster Story. Like, um, you're not to be,
well, and
not to be
well,
rude, but like, keep reading.
the thing is, like, in exposing yourself to more giant monster and to more toku in general, you then begin to develop a stronger appreciation, I would say, for Godzilla and for like all of these other franchises as well. So like it just gives you like a more honed understanding, and mind you, like I am preaching to the like I need to practice what I preach because I am working on expanding my own horizons as a fan too,
Mm-hmm.
because like I have like these little comfortable corners in like Ultraman, for example, that I tend to stay in, but I don't really expand much beyond that, and I need to like actually do that, and because I think it's going to help me appreciate the franchise even more by seeing like
I
its diversity, you know.
I think it does. I think it helps you see what's more, because like the thing is too, like Ultraman was a huge influence on how the later era of the Showa, how the later era of Showa was portrayed, because they were trying to compete
Mhm.
with Ultraman. You know, they were trying to compete with those icons. So like, go and like Godzilla may be the big G, but Godzilla like needs other films to do it. Like, you know, it's why, you know, I think what's fun about it came from a monster movie logic is like the ever expansion of what a monster movie is. Like I was listening to We Hate Movies the other day, and they did the Night at the Museum, and I was like, oh god, Night at the Museum's a monster movie because they're living mannequins. Like
Mhm.
they're monsters. There's a mummy in it. You know, like, you know, there's the undead in the Night of the Museum, which is a wild concept. So like I think that's the thing that I
Mhm.
like about my show is like it kind of showcases how wide ranging the genre can really be and how accessible it can be. Again, like, you know, why do so many people who are unfamiliar with Godzilla watch Godzilla but never watch, like, why are we recommending Godzilla and not like Gamera? Why are we recommending Godzilla and not Ultraman? Why are we recommending this? Why are we recommending Godzilla and not Mothra? Because like what's
Mhm.
great, if it makes you feel better, people that I introduced Mothra to love Mothra, and they're like, Godzilla's an okay character. You know, when I
Oh.
used to be a
Mhm.
babysitter, when I was a nanny, you know, if I had brother and sister dynamics, I would put on only Mothra films, specifically Godzilla versus Mothra from the 90s, because it would show Mothra and Batra, siblings, fighting Godzilla, aka the babysitter. And
Mhm.
you know, it just you know, there's ways to connect people. Like my neighbor, his granddaughter is now obsessed with Godzilla because of me. and she can't wait to come back to the village because we're going to watch Godzilla movies for an evening and all that jazz. So it's just, but
Mm.
I'm probably going to show her Gamera films instead because I think that's going to be a lot more fun. So, you
Ah,
know.
Henry, this has been such an enlightening and fascinating conversation. And I like you're always welcome back, mind you. Hope that
Mm-hmm.
you are aware of that.
Oh, brilliant.
Um, and I will make sure that I have all of the links in the description section of this video as well. So please, everyone, go follow. It came from a monster movie podcast. Go check out Apex, a giant monster series. And any other plugs, Henry, that I'm not
One
thinking
thing I
about?
did fail to mention, I'll tell it now. I'm also the guest manager for Kaiju Brooklyn. If you want to ask why I'm like why like I'm in the community at all, it's not just because I do a podcast and have a face for radio. It is because I also am in Kaiju Brooklyn. I work closely with John, aka Robo Seven. I work closely with Lily, uh, and we try to bring a really great convention in Brooklyn. It's the one reason. It's one of the very few reasons why I come back to the States is because I go back and do stuff. So I'm trying to be more active in that con circuit as well. So if you follow my links and all that jazz, it also helps you keep up to date with Kaiju Brooklyn related matters because it's a great convention. It's one of my favorites. It's better than some other giant monster conventions that might happen in Chicago. So that's just my hot take. Just low key. Just I didn't say names. I'm just saying Brooklyn's a lot of fun. It's a really great location, and it's a really fun convention that celebrates not just Godzilla, but the whole genre of toku as a whole. Like I had friends who are very unfamiliar with the genre. They came to the convention. They had a great time buying stuff, seeing stuff, being at panels. Found it such an enlightening experience. They were like, "Wow, we're really like." For them, a lot of it was their first time experiencing Ultraman, and that's how they're getting into the genre is through Ultraman. So like
Mm,
the wheel is turning that like Godzilla does not necessarily have to be your entry point into this, but we really
mhm.
recommend like doing further reading into the genre because like I think that is the best way to appreciate Godzilla is by knowing about Ultraman, Gamera, King Kong, the Beast of 20,000 Fathoms, the Giant Claw, even, which I think is one of the greatest monster movies of all time. Uh, it's just the
And
whole
also severely underrated.
very underrated. Also, female monster representation.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Yep,
do love to see her.
we do. Henry, you're a gem. And
I
I
try.
appreciate all that you do in this fandom. And I am grateful for our friendship,
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes, my friend.
as am I. My friends, do not forget that Growing Up with Godzilla, relatively if I have my shit together, premieres on the first and third Sunday of every month at 4 p.m. EST. Don't forget to click like, subscribe, all of that jazz. Check out Henry's links in the description section of this video. And most importantly, do not forget to keep standing tall, Godzilla fans. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Catch you on the flip.